Do you want governments telling you what to think, what to read, what to hear, what to listen to? If you listen to the Biden administration or Canada's Trudeau administration, we know that they are actively pushing Facebook, Twitter, Google to censor content in their respective countries that all support a liberal worldview, liberal world order, a liberal worldview, right? We've seen this. We've reported on it. Don't believe me? Just ask Mark Zuckerberg, who, when warned about the Hunter Biden laptop story, said this. Watch.
The FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. I mean, the fact checkers looked into it. No one was able to say it was false.
Yeah, and it wasn't just after the fact. At the time, the New York Post confirmed it was true, but the FBI, the Biden administration, came to him and said, don't run the story, basically suppress it, right? Now Congress is actually asking Mark Zuckerberg for some information. They want to see Facebook's communication with the FBI. So we'll see if we get any of that. It'll be interesting. Last week, it was revealed that the Biden administration asked Twitter to remove a bunch of Dr. Fauci's parody accounts. I love this. I love literally the Biden administration is worried about Fauci parody accounts on Twitter. Is that the role of the federal government, to censor satire? Like, are they going to go after The Onion and what is that, Babylon Bee next? Like, well, they already did.
They already did go after the Babylon Bee.
Yeah, I forgot about it. They censored a comedy account. Like, this is where we're at, right? That's the plain. That's, you know, so that's plain censorship of speech. Former Biden propagandist Jen Psaki told us all of this is a matter of life and death. Remember this?
We believe that all of us, social media companies, platforms, where a lot of this misinformation travels, the media, state and local officials, it's important for everybody to step up. And certainly the pushback against disinformation, information that is, literally a matter of life and death, is something that is going to be a continued focus of this administration. You are right that obviously decisions to regulate or hold to account any platform would certainly be a policy decision, but in the interim, we're going to continue to call out disinformation and call out where that information travels.
Does the president have plans to speak with Mark Zuckerberg at all about this?
There's no plans that I'm aware of. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, not that I'm aware of, but of course.
Our people will.
Our people will. He's not going to call him. You know, he's not. He doesn't know where he is. But our team will call and make sure that they take down parody accounts of Dr. Fauci and other misinformation, disinformation. Trudeau's government.
Yeah, remember how people freaked out about that video of Nancy Pelosi talking slow, like somebody slowed it down like she was drunk, and she completely flipped out, and they got that removed?
Oh, yeah. So just call up your friends in the Biden team. Joe won't call, but somebody else will. Maybe it's Jean-Pierre. She'll call. Well, meanwhile, Trudeau's government, we learned today, is fast-tracking its online censorship bill. You could be fined up to $70,000 by the Canadian government if you say things that are harmful or what they deem as harmful. Now Australia is pushing Google and Facebook to do the very same thing. This time around, climate change. So as Reclaim the Net reports, Australian Academy of Science demands social media platforms ban climate misinformation. The Australian Academy of Science is getting in on the action with this. Now they aren't technically part of the government, but of course it's a gray area, right? Because they operate with grants from the Australian government. I guess you could say the same thing of like NPR, right? And they also run on the endorsement of the Australian government. And here's what it says on their website. The Australian Academy of Science provides independent, authoritative, and individual influential scientific advice, promotes international scientific engagement, builds public awareness and understanding of science, and champions, celebrates, and supports excellence in Australian science. So they provide independent, authoritative. Okay, are they really independent when they're getting their money from the government? It tells you what to do and who to approve. So in a public submission, here's what the Reclaim the Net says. In a public submission to tech giants in the 2022 review of the Australian Code of Practice of Misinformation and Disinformation, the Australian Academy of Science and the Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering called on online platforms to crack down on climate denial misinformation.
Okay, that's a ridiculous graphic that you chose for
I
that.
chose Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee,
Yeah.
because I thought he would say, like, that's not a knife.
This is an
This is a knife.
That's not a knife.
No, I think you'd say like that's not how you do science.
This
is how you do science.
This is how you
There
do
we go.
science. What kind of bloody crap is this? The academics want online platforms to fight what it calls climate denialism by actively promoting reliable, peer-reviewed, and appropriately labeled material from trusted sources, it says.
Okay, but when you think about those trusted sources, right? We recently did a piece here on the show about the Great Barrier Reef.
Right.
And how the organization that has been tracking it actually did not this year report national averages in order to make it seem like the reef was not recovering when in fact it was, right? And so they're presenting it in a shocking and sort of anxietizing way on purpose, right?
Isn't the Great Barrier Reef Australia?
They are allowed to, yes.
Right, yeah. So their Great Barrier Reef data, they're allowed to present it as fake?
No, they didn't present it as fake. They specifically manipulated the data to not admit that their prediction that I think if I recall, the prediction was that the Great Barrier Reef would be to like 20 to 30% of what it was.
Right, shrinking.
By the year 2022. And we're here. And in fact, the reef the averages are up. And so most scientists say actually the reef will always go up and down. It's less dependent on human. It's more dependent on all kinds of things. It's predatory species and all kinds of things. So, but what we reported here was that this organization did not report averages because they didn't want to admit that they were wrong with their, what's the word I'm looking for? Their like prediction of doom, right?
Right, their doomsday scenario.
Yes,
I don't know
that they were
Is there a
wrong
word?
for their
Armageddon? What's a word?
No, what's the word for inducing anxiety with their panic-inducing
Fear-mongering?
with their panic-inducing data?
Incitement.
Armageddon, fear-mongering, incitement.
There's a word that's just escaping me right now, but you know what I'm saying.
All right. I think the other
Mondo
word for it-
Dismo?
I don't know. Anyway, the Academy's submission noted that the code of practice on misinformation and disinformation excludes professional news content, that a publisher under a publicly available editorial code, it adds that the exclusion allows climate science denialism and other misinformation to flourish. So by not going after and censoring the news, it allows fake news about the climate to flourish, it says, in Australia, either through a lack of enforcement of the disinformation provision of the code of failure or of news outlets themselves, their misinformation to meet the higher bar of being considered disinformation. So here again, Reclaim the Net says, while climate issues are not part of their conservative pundits' main content strategy, they nevertheless engage in frequent criticism of their respective governments' environmental policies, attack or ridicule prominent climate activists, or employ narratives outlined in the previous section of this report, the paper reads. So they're basically saying, we're just going to go after, these conservative pundits, basically. Their main content strategy is that they're ridiculing some of the prominent stuff that's out there. And we need to make sure they don't do that. Like the Great Barrier Reef story.
Yes.
Right? That would have fallen under that. The submission.
Well, what would science be like if all the scientists were like, I don't even want to hear your theory. That's misinformation. It's like, we are dead set that it is this way and it is no other way. Get out of my office. It's like, wait, but I've got evidence. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. You can't say anything. The submission singles out Sky News Australia, by the way, as the key source of climate misinformation globally. They're the biggest. They're the main problem, I guess, according to this report. Specifically, they named journalists that they want Google and Facebook to target.
Okay.
Like Rita Panya, I don't know if I'm saying her name right. Like
Panahi.
Rita Panahi from Sky News. She's been calling out the climate change hypocrisy for years, Rita has. Rita, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Thank you for the great work. Like this report that she did on how just a few years ago, the media were scaring us about a global ice age if we didn't get our climate under control. Watch this.
Let's take a trip down memory lane to a time when hysterical governments weren't declaring climate emergencies because of catastrophic global warming. Back to 1978, a time when there was fear of an imminent ice age.
At least 8 times in the past million years, it has advanced and retreated with clockwork regularity. If we are unprepared for the next advance, the result could be hunger and death on a scale unprecedented in all of history.
Yeah, there's Spock.
Is that Spock?
That's Leonard Nimoy.
Nice.
Yeah, because he used to do the In Search Of show back then after Star Trek, you know? So that's a perfect example of, right? She's calling out, she's literally laying out how the media used to tell us all about the Ice Age. I remember hearing about this in the 80s.
Yeah.
How the Ice Age is coming back. If we don't get our climate taken care of, it's the Ice Age. And now it's the opposite. Now it's not the Ice Age. Now it's going to be heat waves.
Yes.
Right? So she's calling out this hypocrisy of the media. And in fact, now if you go to YouTube, there's a warning label on this video saying climate change, context, United Nations. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns mainly caused by human activities, especially the burning of fossil fuels. So Google's already doing its part. YouTube's already doing its part for these guys in Australia, putting up these types of labels on videos about the context. What context? The United Nations is telling us this?
Wait, they're singling out fossil fuels as the one. I mean,
Yeah. Let's put that back up on the screen if you can, Philip. Like, this is climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns, mainly caused by human activities, especially the burning of fossil fuels. That's your new YouTube, Google
It's
little block
interesting.
and an alert there for Rita's videos and any other like climate-related videos. I guess they want.
So
you to know
then those
about.
of us who broadcast on YouTube need to be aware of like what we say now, right? About climate.
I guess.
Okay.
So, and then to wrap this up, here's what Reclaim says. And this is what the piece says, the actual report says. It is the greatest crisis ever faced by our species. We're calling on Facebook and Google to stop promoting and funding climate denial. Start labeling it as misinformation and stop giving the advantages of their enormous platform to lies and misinformation. As long as Facebook and Google carry on doing this business with climate deniers, they cannot claim to be green. They owe it to us and the planet we all share to deliver.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks to our friends over at the Australian Academy of Sciences for your wonderful work on demanding that social media platforms ban misinformation.
Way to open up the conversation.
Yeah.
Good for a good scientific discussion.